With the appointment of now Associate Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the talk of packing the court has grown more strident. So let's take some time and ponder what court packing is, why it's important, and what it tells us about the state of our government. Next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here, the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution. We teach the rising generation to be free. I am glad you could join me. Please share this information. If you're watching me on Facebook or YouTube, Twitter, share this information. Hey, give me a like, give me a subscription. Let me know that you're out there, and let's find ways that we can continue to share this information. Just so you know, I am also on Parler and I'm on Rumble, and I'm looking for other places to distribute these videos because, let's face it, social media is no longer truly a safe place. It's no longer a truly open market for the exchange of ideas. So if you want to find out more, if you want to keep in touch, head over to the website constitutionstudy.com and click that sign up for the newsletter button. If you sign up for the newsletter, there's a nice little checkbox that says, send me those posts when they come out. That means regardless of what Facebook or YouTube does, when I release a new video, you get an email with a link to it. So head over to the website, do that. Help gather this information. Most importantly, help share this information. There's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot I'm going to ask you to do, but let's start with just looking at this information, sharing it, discussing it, and debating it. That's why I love questions and comments on what goes on in this material. So today we're going to talk about court packing, and most importantly, what we can learn from the recent calls that they packed the Supreme Court. So let's talk about what court packing is. Now, we all have a basic understanding, I believe, of what court packing is, but sadly, there are those who are trying to twist the language to make it mean something different for, well, I believe, political reasons. At its core, court packing is adding members to a court that are sympathetic with you in an attempt to get an outcome you desire. Stop and think about that for just a second. The purpose of court packing is to get an outcome that you desire. So court packing has never been used in the history that I'm aware of to find justice. It has only been used to promote an agenda. Now, court packing is actually nothing new in America. Most people talk about the fact that, well, FDR tried to pack the courts. You see, back in the 30s, FDR had his New Deal idea. He had all these programs that he wanted to establish, and there was just one tiny little problem. They aren't constitutional. They weren't legal. And the problem he had was the Supreme Court kept knocking them down. He says, no, you're not allowed to. The Constitution does not give you the authority to do that. No, they're not legal. And that frustrated him. How could he get his agenda through if the courts kept thwarting what he thought was the right answer? Forget what the people had said in the powers that they had delegated to the United States government. They didn't care about that. He knew better. He wanted to get his agenda through. And if you read the history, he threatened to pack the court. He threatened to add justices who would agree with him. And again, if we think about that, what is he saying? He's not saying, maybe there's a problem with my legislation. Maybe there's a problem with the programs I'm promoting. Maybe I should go back and either fix the program so they're constitutional or ask the American people for the legal authority to implement them. No. We're going to threaten to pack the court. He would find justices that would agree with him. Now, I find that kind of an ironic term because what he's looking for is not justice. He's not talking about we're going to look at the law and apply the law. He says we're going to look at the law and promote an agenda. Court packing is about promoting an agenda above the law, above the rights of the people, above justice. But here's the other thing to notice. Court packing is a threat. It was a threat used by FDR in the 30s. It is a threat being used today by many progressives in government. If you don't give us what we want, we will rig the game. We will hire referees that are bought and paid for. This is extortion. There's no other term for it. This is bullying and extortion. Give us what we want or we will beat you up forever. Now, what's interesting is in the 1930s, FDR so intimidated the Supreme Court that the court backed down. The court stopped ruling based on the law and gave FDR what he wanted because he threatened them with court packing. Even the veneer of an independent court disappeared when they submitted to FDR's bullying. Now, will the courts submit to this bullying? Will the Congress submit to this bullying? Now, the President and the Senate have the authority to determine the number of seats on the court by how many people that are nominated and appointed. The question is it right? Is it just? Is it even due process for the number of seats on the court to be changed for political reasons? Because the agenda that you want was not promoted. That's ultimately the question. These people are threatening the courts. They're threatening the American people if they don't get their way. See, we talk about court packing. Is it a threat to Trump? Is it a threat to this? No, it's a threat to the American people. Why? Well, let's recognize that the role of the court today is nothing like the one designed by our founding fathers in 1787. See, the purpose of the court is to look at controversies, look at the parties' arguments, look at the law, look at including the Constitution, and then issue an opinion. However, that's not how courts work today. Courts today look at the parties, look at their argument, look at the opinion, and then look at their own agenda. Justices look at what do they think is right, not what is legal, not what the people have established. They look at what they think is right. They become the legislature. They become the policymakers. And you can see this by the amount of the progressive agenda that has been implemented, not through the legislative process, but through the judicial one. The national legalization of abortion and homosexual marriage took the issues out of the hands of the people. The state legislatures were working on those problems. The court took it out of their hands and said, we will decide for everybody what this will be. We've even gone so far as to start calling judicial opinions rulings, like they're kings and queens whose word is law. Look at how much of the discussion, not just the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, but Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, all the way back to Bork, has little to do with the law and the Constitution, has everything to do with precedent. We've turned precedent from a tool to assist a judge in making an opinion to law. It is now considered, it's basically common law that we've allowed the courts to legislate from the bench. So now you have a group of people who have for decades gotten their way on the courts. With rare exception, issues like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, the right to keep and bear arms have been restricted by the courts because they were against the agenda of what we now call the progressives. And that has been threatened. Their rule of the Supreme Court has been threatened. Forget who appointed whom. Look at the opinions of the court and how often they deviate from the actual law. And now you have a president, and again, this is nothing about Trump, but now what we have is we have more justices who have at least expressed that they will decide based on the law and the Constitution. And we have more of them that are actually doing it. Now, Gorsuch has been pretty good, although I do disagree with him on a couple of his opinions. Kavanaugh, okay. I'm curious to see what Amy Coney Barrett does. I know what she said in the Senate. I know what her previous opinions. I have some hope, but I'm going to wait and see what she actually does. But what we have is another example of, if I don't get my way, I'm going to change the rules. Those are the words of a tyrant. So when you see Chuck Schumer or Ocasio-Cortez or any of these politicians saying, we are going to revolt because we didn't get the nominee we wanted, we didn't get the justice we wanted, you're talking about tyrants, bullies. Anybody talking about packing the court is a bully and an extortionist and is unqualified to hold office. Now, you may disagree with Amy Coney Barrett. You may agree with him. You may agree or disagree with Trump. You may agree or disagree with anywhere. But if you won't recognize that the American people, through their states, elected a president, that the American people elected senators, and that the president and those senators have the legal authority and, in fact, the legal duty to appoint justices, then you're not interested in the rule of law. You're not interested in self-government. You are a tyrant. You will get your way by hook or by crook. And what we're seeing is the crook. Why did I name this episode Packing the Bags of Liberty? Because it reminded me of George Washington's first inaugural address. And since this preservation of the sacred fires of liberty and the destination of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finely staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. If we pack the courts, we're not simply giving a political advantage to one party. We're not simply allowing a group of people to manipulate the system to get their ends. We are taking the sacred fires of our liberty, our rights, and those of our children that we've already handed over to this oligarchy of 9 and saying they will be dictated to by a tyrannical group bent on subjugating those who disagree with them. And if you think it stops here, don't fool yourself. If the Democrats pack the court one time, the Republicans will pack the court another, till the court grows to this unwieldy behemoth that tramples each and every right the American people cherish. As I said, packing courts is nothing new. I mentioned FDR, but packing the court actually goes all the way back to 1800, when John Adams, a Federalist, lost the 1800 presidential election to Thomas Jefferson, an anti-Federalist. He tried to pack the court. He just didn't do a very good job of it. He packed all the federal courts, not just Supreme Court. He tried to pack all the other federal courts, and he did a bad job of it. And that led to the case Marbury versus Madison. You can read more about that on the website. But the question is, will this country be ruled by will the sacred fires of liberty be entrusted to the American people or to a group of bullies and tyrants? Now, I'm recording this before the election results are known, but it's posting after the election is known, or at least most of them are. So the die has been cast from 2020. The question is, to the American people, are you satisfied with knowing that many of you have hired bullies and tyrants to force your will on others? There is no other way to put it. If you voted for these people calling for court packing, you have hired bullies and tyrants that will force their will and your will on the American people. You are tyrants. You are no different than what happened during the French Revolution, except they haven't brought out the guillotine yet. Now, if you voted for people who say, no, we will not pack the court, will you stand with them as they get pilloried? Because we know the media is with the tyrants. The news media, the social media, the entertainment, Hollywood, they are with the tyrants. Will you stand with those who are standing against the tyrants? There's a line from the book of Ezekiel that said God was seeking a man who would build a wall and stand in the gap to protect Israel. The question is, American people, will we build our own wall? Not on the southern border, but at the ballot box. And will we stand with those we have placed there? Will we stand against all forms of tyranny, oppression, bullying, extortion, even if it's to get something we think is good? Can you justify bashing someone over the head because you know what's best for them? Can you justify throwing out the Constitution, throwing out the rule of law, throwing out the sacred fires of liberty staked on this self-government because you want to get your way? Court packing is not simply some esoteric thing about the Supreme Court. It's about whether or not freedom, liberty, and the rule of law still matter in this country. It's a question of, does the will of the people still matter in this country? Will we uphold the Constitution? If you wish to change something, do it the right way. But if you're going to do it by crook because you couldn't do it by hook, then not only are you a tyrant, but you're a traitor to the American people. You are attempting to overthrow our form of government, if not in word, in effect. Now, if you want to go out and convince the people that these programs are worth doing, and if it's necessary, change the Constitution to do it, so be it. But if you're going to get 9 or 13 or 15 or 21 people in black robes to do what the American people say no to, you are no different than George III. You're Robespierre. You are a tyrant. You are a bully. And it's time the American people who enjoy freedom and liberty started standing up to these tyrants, these extortioners, these bullies, and point them out for what they truly are. Weak, petty little people who couldn't get their way, so they're willing to change the rules, stack the deck, cheat to get what they want. Do you want to live in a country run like that? So you may be wondering why I didn't talk about this before the election. And well, the answer is fairly simple. I had a lot of other stuff to talk about. Now that Amy Coney Barrett has been appointed, now we'll see if all of that bark about court packing was just that, bark with no bite. If they try to implement court packing, we need to understand what it really means. It means the destruction of the republic. It means the removal of the rule of law. It means the removal of the people from control of their governments and their country. If we can pass laws, if we can set limits in our Constitution, and they can simply hire people that will ignore it, then what? Then why bother? Why we are no longer a constitutional republic? That we are effectively a tyrannical oligarchy. We are no longer the land of the free and the home of the brave. But as much as people talk about what's going to happen in Washington, the answer ultimately comes down to we, the people. Are you a bully? Are you a tyrant? Or are you willing to stand for freedom and liberty? Are you willing to stand your ground against these attempts to turn us into an oligarchy? Are you willing to stand against these attempts to remove the American people from control of their government? Are you willing to stand? Are you willing to not commit violence, but to defend yourself, your rights, and those of your children? Are you willing to fight now so that your children don't have to fight later? Because we can still fight at the ballot box. But if we turn control of this government over to a manipulated, politicized court, where if you don't get your way, we'll just hire more justices that'll opine the way we want, that will rule from the bench, then the sacred fires of liberty have gone out. If you won't fight for your rights and the rights of your children, you have no one to blame for the mess that we're making. So I hope you take this information, share it please, sign up for the newsletter. Hey, if you like this material, if you like the podcasts and the videos and the articles I'm putting out, please donate. Go to the website, click the donate button on the right-hand side. Everything you donate there goes towards keeping this podcast going. Pays for my hosting, pays for the software, pays for the equipment, makes it happen. If you want to become a part of this, do that. If you really want to become a part of the Constitution Study, consider getting a membership to the Constitution Study. Go to theconstitutionstudy.com/shop. Simply request a membership. It's $5 a month or $50 a year. That gives you 2 months free. Give it a try. If you don't like it, you get 30 days to get your money back. But you'll become part of a group that is fighting for our rights and our liberty, that are trying to educate the people so that we do not go the way of the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution or the Chinese Revolution, but we remain with the way of the American Revolution, where we the people are in charge, where rights and liberties are protected, and you are free to live your life however you wish, as long as you don't deprive others of their rights. And if you found that something worth fighting for, I hope I'll see you here next time on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to